The topic of this class is growing early season vegetables in the Pacific Northwest. Our objectives include learning varieties of vegetables that grow early in cool air temperature and soil temperature, understanding the advantages of growing early vegetables, and learning 3 techniques to be successful. What to plant early in the growing season. First of all, early season vegetables are those varieties that grow in the cool air and soil temperatures. You want to check your seed packet for temperature requirements. This is an example of the back of a seed packet that gives you soil depth, spacing, and temperatures necessary for this variety. However, a lot of seed packets don't contain this information. Oregon State University's Extension Service has a vegetable production specific handout that is useful because it lists a lot of varieties of vegetables and gives specific information on planting those varieties. Here are some examples of vegetables that grow in cool soil temperature. You can see the range of the soil temperature is between 35 and 40 degrees. A surprising number of vegetables will start growing at these temperatures, including cole crops in the mustard cabbage families like broccoli, cabbage, mustards, kale, Brussels sprouts. There are a large variety of leafy greens that grow in cool temperatures. A lot of these greens stop growing when the summer heat warms up the soil and the air. So you're more successful if you begin early planting things like Swiss chard, lettuce, dill, beet greens, bok choy, green onions. There's just a large variety of plants in this category that are useful and delicious. Root crops also grow in cool temperatures. There's a lot of different beet varieties that are available, carrots, radishes, and kohlrabi. That's a vegetable that a lot of people don't ordinarily grow. It's very fun because the root grows on top of the ground. It comes in green or purple, and it's just wonderful to see in your garden early in the season. Also, early peas and early potatoes are another wonderful way to start the growing season. You can plant shell peas and sugar pod peas early and have them develop before almost any other produce is available. Also, there are a variety of potatoes that can be started early and harvested early as new potatoes. The benefits of growing early season vegetables, including having a greater variety of produce. As I said, a lot of these varieties don't do well in the summer heat, so getting going early, you have the advantage of giving you a different selection. It also is an efficient way to use limited garden space because you're doing succession planting. You plant your early season crops and you harvest them, and then you plant your summer crops in the same space. There are also fewer pests in the early season, with the exception of slugs. It's important to put out non-toxic slug bait that's specifically useful to vegetable gardening. Also, because the air and soil temperature is cooler, there's more available water in the soil, and it isn't necessary to supplement with irrigation. And of course, one of the great benefits is enjoying fresh greens for salad. 2 factors affect how early you can begin planting. The first is the soil temperature. It's important to have a soil thermometer. Because our seasons are changing and our soil and air temperatures are warming earlier, the information that's published often doesn't keep up with what's happening in our local environment. So taking the temperature of your garden soil is a good way to begin planting early. It's recommended that you take the temperature at 9 o'clock in the morning for 7 consecutive days and record these temperatures and average it to get an accurate account of how warm it really is in your garden. Also, you want to check the soil moisture Because a lot of our garden areas have a lot of clay, they tend to retain a lot of moisture. The photograph on the left is a clump of soil. You do the squeeze test. You hold it in your hand and you squeeze the soil. If it stays in a clump, the soil is too wet to be worked. If it crumbles like the photograph on the right, that is indicative of its time to plant. If you start planting and working your soil too early when it's wet, you disturb the soil structure, it compacts the soil, and it reduces the airspace available for the plant roots to penetrate and for the water to penetrate. So it's important to make sure you've got the right level of moisture before you get into your garden. A spading fork is a useful tool early in the season to start mixing in your organic matter. So there are some tips for planting early. Adding 2 to 4 inches of organic matter in the fall is most helpful. If you haven't gotten around to doing that in the fall, you can add composted materials in the spring. Choosing cool season crop varieties is important if you're planting at these temperatures. Preparing the seed ahead of time. An example would be pre-sprouting seeds like peas between wet paper towels. This ensures that your seeds are going to sprout when you put them in the ground. Pre-soak seeds like beets and radishes that have hard surfaces. 4 to 6 hours is plenty before planting in the ground. You may also use transplants to get the plants started growing before they're put in the ground. Clear plastic can also be used to cover the soil and warm it prior to planting. You can plant in raised beds or containers because these become warmer sooner than your garden beds. Containers also offer the advantage that you can move them around to warmer locations. Covering the plants with row cover to keep them warm is helpful. Using a cold frame to start seeds or transplants also works well. This is an example of containers placed against a foundation on top of cement bricks. The bricks retain heat at night, keep these plants warm, getting them started early. The cold frame is useful in starting seeds and keeping growing plants warm prior to putting them in the ground. Here is an example of using polyethylene sheeting over your garden soil before planting to warm it up. Floating row cover is very useful in keeping your plants warm. It also has the advantage of keeping out flying insects. Floating row cover can be placed over hoops and can be placed directly over growing plants. It's very light material, and as the plants grow, the row cover lifts. It's important to anchor the sides of the row cover with boards or rocks because it will blow around in the wind. You need to decide whether you're going to use seeds or transplants. Some vegetable varieties do well direct seeded into your garden bed. Others do much better if they're used as transplants. Examples of direct seeded crops would be carrots and lettuce, beets, radishes. Transplants such as kale, cabbage, and broccoli do better if they're started ahead of time. Another option for growing things early is to plant perennial vegetables that come up when the soil and air temperature are right. It's great to go out to your garden and find new shoots of asparagus coming up early and seeing the artichoke globe forming early. You have to allow a bed specifically for perennial vegetables because you're not going to be disturbing that every year. You're going to leave them in the ground and watch them come up like magic in the spring. Two other varieties of perennials that are more uncommon are Jerusalem artichoke on the left. It's like a sunflower. It's beautiful in the summer. It dies back in the winter, and the chokes or the tubers underground can be left in the ground and harvested pretty much year-round. Sorrel is a leafy green that comes back every year. It's used in soup and also salad. It's a tangy spinach-like green. Another option for having early vegetables is to plant overwintering vegetables in the fall or late summer. The photograph on the left is Swiss chard planted in a raised bed at my neighbor's farm. This lasted throughout the winter until approximately 1 month ago. If that is left in the garden bed, it will bolt or go to flower and form seeds. It can be pulled out and replanted, or some of it can be left to reseed naturally in her raised bed. The photograph in the center is purple sprouting broccoli. That plant can be put in the ground in the fall, and when the temperature is right, the florets start forming and they can be harvested. On the right is kale. It's a very hardy vegetable. It's a great leafy green. It can survive through the winter. It can even be picked out of a snowbank. The snow and cold temperatures make it much sweeter. Another option would be to allow a garden bed or part of your garden bed to leave vegetables that will naturalize or reseed. Arugula, mache, also known as corn salad, dill, and bull's blood beets are particular varieties that do well. The benefit to that is that they will start growing before you can actually get into your garden to work the soil. But the seeds that are already in the ground know the right temperature to start growing, and they will. You can go out there and surprise yourself by finding some great salad greens early on. Also try some unusual considered vegetables. Garlic scapes formed on the ends of the flowering stalks of hardneck garlic that's planted in the fall around October are great to be cut and put in green salad or used in stir fry. There's also a vegetable, it's an heirloom called purple mountain oric. There's different colors of oric. It's a spinach-like leaf. It grows readily. It's often grown as an ornamental because it has beautiful pink plumes, but the leaves can be eaten almost year-round. It's a lot like spinach with a little more tang. Don't forget your soil fertility if you're planning on starting early. It's best to add your organic matter in the fall. However, if you haven't done that, you can add organic fertilizers like kelp, bone, and blood meal 2 months before planting. You can also add heavily composted manure early, 2 months ahead of time. You can use soluble organic fertilizers and inorganic fertilizers to apply directly to your vegetable plants while they're growing. In summary, steps to be successful growing early season vegetables include warming the soil by covering it with clear plastic, using a season extender like row cover or a hoop house to keep plants warm, choose varieties of vegetables that grow in the cool season, use a soil thermometer to determine when it's time to plant. And of course, enjoy the wonders of early greens. Thank you.